when someone mentions to you, this band, they grew up in church, whatever, as though it is a generic qualifier, like everyone knows what that means. No, we don't know what that means.
This is Rock That Doesn't Roll, the story of Christian music. I'm Andrew Gill, a music journalist who grew up listening to Christian rock.
And I'm Leah Payne, author of God Gave Rock and Roll to You, a history of contemporary Christian music.
And today on the show, we have a Leah special.
I'm so excited for that. Yes. We are talking to my friend from graduate school days, and who is not only my friend, way more than being my friend. Julie Hight is an incredible journalist who writes for NPR Music and Nashville Public Radio, but also a number of other news outlets. But I knew Julie from back in the day when we were both at Vanderbilt Divinity School. So Julie is especially well positioned to write about Christian music because Julie has an extensive theological education and is just a super smart and insightful person. As you can tell, I'm very excited to be introducing that conversation.
Yeah, Julie was a great interview. She is definitely a notable music journalist. I recently heard her. She was the one person at NPR that landed the Casey Musgraves interview before
Pretty fantastic.
Her recent album came out. So that's the status that Julie has attained, as a music journalist. Pretty good,
And Julie has decided to give us her attention. We are so grateful. She descended from the mountaintop and is among us today. Wearing clogging shoes.
Yeah, we covered quite a bit of stuff, so it's a fun conversation, and it'll be coming up in just a minute.
The rock that doesn't roll.
This show is supported by Odoo. When you buy business software from lots of vendors, the costs add up and it gets complicated and confusing. Odoo solves this. It's a single company that sells a suite of enterprise apps that handles everything from accounting to inventory to sales. Odoo is all connected on a single platform in a simple and affordable way. You can save money without missing out on the features you need. Check out Odoo at odoo.com. That's odoo.com. This show is supported by Blue Land. We hear a lot about microplastics in oceans and food, but they can also come from products we use every day at home, including cleaning products. Blue Land is on a mission to make it easy for everyone to make sustainable choices. Blue Land believes that hardworking, clean products can be the norm, not the exception, so that you can do better for your family and the planet at the same time. From cleaning sprays and toilet bowl cleaner to dishwasher and laundry detergent tablets, Blue Land's products are independently tested to perform alongside major brands, and the formulas are free from dyes, parabens, and harsh chemicals. You'll love not having to choose between the safe option and what actually gets your house clean. Blue Land is a certified B Corp and Leaping Bunny cruelty-free certified. Their formulas are EPA's Safer Choice certified, and many products have also earned Cradle to Cradle's Gold Material Health Certificate. If you're looking to make a small change in your routine, you can get 15% off your first order at blueland.com/prx. Get 15% off your first order by going to blueland.com/prx. blueland.com/prx.
I am so proud to have known Julie for many years, and I'm so grateful that Julie is going to be sharing insight with us today. Welcome, Julie Hight, to Rock That Doesn't Roll.
Welcome.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. What a dope full circle.
It is. Yes, I remember. Yeah, Julie and I were master students at the same time at Vanderbilt Divinity School. And this is not surprising. I remember you as just like such a sharp tack in class. And it's really fun to see you out in the world doing this incredible work.
I mean, likewise. And I want to thank you for the millionth time for writing the definitive history of contemporary Christian music that we all needed and probably no one else was up for writing, given the work and the research and the thought and the knowledge that it took. So thank you. Thank you so much for that work, for giving that
Mutual Admiration Society. And we are just, Andrew and I are so glad that you have agreed to come and talk with us. And I wonder if Andrew and I were talking when we were prepping to be in conversation with you, and Andrew asked me how you got started in this world. And I realized, even though I've known you for a really long time, I don't know. I don't know your journey from, I know a little bit about, because you and I have been in conversation over the last couple of years. I know a little bit about why you know a little bit about contemporary Christian music, but I realize I don't know your pathway from theological studies into music criticism and just culture criticism in Nashville. Could you tell us a little bit about that story?
Yeah. I mean, I think you want me to start with when we were in classes together, where I was at that point? Or are you talking about formative stuff before
Oh,
that?
yes, please. Both of them. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it seems like we can take from as a base set that you have an aversion to high-paying jobs, right? So that's...
Andrew is the spouse of a clergy person, by the way, so knows both ends.
It's not gonna.
Yeah. I definitely get that. Yeah, I think. I mean, there definitely was a time when I thought that I might become a church worship leader as well, or something like that, But I think, I mean, it was kind of a wild ride to get a deep introduction to both Christian and secular music as, cultural worlds with their own rules, and that, worlds that I might be participating in one way or another. I mean, I'm just one generation removed from rural North Carolinians. Like, I was born on the coast of North Carolina, but so in my family there was some, country music and roots music and a lot of listening to oldies. That was permissible even when my parents got much more evangelical. You could listen to oldies because that was safe stuff from the 50s and 60s. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I think that's a pretty common experience. And then I think there were a lot of things in play, like my mom really getting into Christian bookstores and, and online, mail order of Christian materials and buying me stuff there and bringing home the magazines and the tapes and eventually CDs, that kind of stuff. And listening to, I mean, a lot of that early stuff that I got my hands on was more the adult contemporary, the grown-up side of CCM. And then with youth group life and the ascendance of punk and ska and hardcore and the tooth and nail of it all, then I really got into that stuff and was also getting into playing drums at the same time. Because for me, it was always either, I mean, my mom was telling me from a really young age that I would probably be a writer, a journalist. And I was just like, whatever. I was not listening, but I was studying drums. But I did keep getting pulled
early on.
Really?
I mean, I really don't know how, but I did end up getting pulled into like the middle school newspaper and the high school newspaper and the university newspaper and, studying, I mean, as a contributing writer. So, so that was kind of inevitable, but I was also studying drums. And then, I had to go somewhere other than my parents' church, which was PCA, Presbyterian, no drums there. So I had to go elsewhere to have my experience playing drums, in youth group services and church services, and also being enlisted in, theatrical presentations of Carmen songs and all those things. That I had to go somewhere different for that. But I think it's pretty hilarious that somewhere in my high school years, I was at a Supertones show that there were some punk and hardcore bands, Christian bands, and there was a photographer there, and he got all up in my face in the mosh pit and that kind of thing. And then 2 years later, someone that I was in a class with my senior year of high school was like, there's a big picture of you in, it was either Time or Life magazine, like a long form piece on the Christian rock underground. And there's a 2-page spread of my blown up, gross, sweaty face. And then, you know, a couple of years later, I wound up in a band that we played at WFM Festival that the Supertones were also on. And then their lead singer wound up being my next door neighbor in East Nashville for a time. And he started a lot of arguments with me because I was at a different place by then.
Oh, that's so funny. Was that during your divinity school era or?
Yeah, it was. It was. Yeah, he would start conversations like, you know, I have been hearing these things about the divinity school, you know, that people don't believe in Jesus over there. And
oh my goodness.
or he did one time when it was literally freezing outside, he tried to corner me and, you know, get into a conversation or more of a argument, you know, and he said, "Are you a theological liberal?" That was the opening line. And I was just like, get out of here.
This is going to be a fruitful conversation, I can tell.
But you know, I mean, there, as you both know really well and have all kinds of conversations about, it's a long and complex kind of journey to making sense of all of the stuff that you're presented with growing up and those spaces and everything that you're taught. So for me, it took 7 years of college education, you know, 4 years of undergrad, and the 3 years that I spent at the divinity school and doing the Carpenter program in religion, gender, and sexuality, and some interdisciplinary stuff in music, religion, in the South.
Oh yeah, I was a part of that too.
Yeah, so I was already writing about music by then. You know, I'd already, you know, started publishing stuff professionally when I was in undergrad, writing about music. And I remember publishing one thing that kind of pissed off the then head of the Gospel Music Association because it pointed out that they were inflating their commercial stats that year because they included a Mannheim Steamroller Christmas album and the O Brother Where Art Thou soundtrack and a U2 album in their
Which
list
those
of
were
top
like
10.
those years would have been some of the biggest. I mean, for sure, "Oh Brother Where Art Thou." That is cheating.
Yeah, those
big
are
time.
massive. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, mixing it up.
Making waves. Yeah. I'm still blown away by the idea that the Supertones singer lived in Nashville. And I'm like, did they change the name of the band from the OC Supertones to the Nash? I don't know, like, what would you call it then?
No, they might have dropped OC somewhere along the way. But by the time he was my next door neighbor, I, you know, had gotten rid of everything, all the merch that I'd ever owned except one Tooth and Nail hoodie. And then I got rid of it when I actually got to know him. And I never let him know that I ever knew who his band was.
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
Or that I had ever been to any of their shows, owned any t-shirts or patches, or played a festival.
Or that you'd been prominently photographed in their mosh pit and published in the magazine.
I didn't want
Well, we know he's a faithful listener, so surprise!
I do.
Julie knew who you were.
I do think
No,
maybe
he
the
is.
guitar player from Reliant K might be a listener, but
Really? Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's funny. Actually, I have no idea, and I'm assuming not. But
He could be. We do have a
yeah.
lot of
We have a couple
listeners.
emails, outstanding emails. That is so funny. I didn't know that. I remember that you were a writer then, and that you'd published a lot of stuff. And I remember, so there was this grant funded initiative that I got put on because I had worked in the business for a while and I was interested in it.
Right.
But I didn't think I'd ever write about music. And actually, I got to give a shout out to Dr. John McClure, who they would do these dinners. And of course, I went to every single one because it was a free dinner at a fancy restaurant that was like grant funded. And I remember being at one and he was like, "You used to work in CCM?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "You should write about that." And I remember just thinking like, no, what is there to write about? And so Vanderbilt Divinity School's getting a lot of, we should send this to their alumni relations. Thing.
I mean, yeah, because we've had David Dark on
David
as well.
Dark.
He was also.
Right.
Yeah, he was there.
Yeah.
Yep. Anyway.
John McClure was, he really encouraged me to, even though I was not there to study homiletics by any means, but he was just so encouraging about kind of pulling all these threads together, like using your past experience and your interest in the arts and doing that kind of work. And he also, pulled me into playing drums with him
and his daughter
and Dave Perkins at some, in various settings. And I can't remember who else wound up playing with us, but
Andrew, that there's a homiletics professor who was just the kindest man and had a daughter who was really in Leslie, I think is her name. Who's a really talented musician as well. And so Nashville's such a cool place to go to school for one thing, and then you end up doing like music is just everywhere there. So that was a really neat part of it. In fact, I remember, I'm not sure if I've told this story on this podcast, but do you remember? So I remember meeting someone, and I'll withhold his name in case he doesn't want to be named here. But I remember he said, "Yeah, I've got some friends who are really into music. I think they're gonna like make it big." I was just on tour with them in Europe, and I remember thinking like, eye roll, because everyone knows somebody who's somebody, in Nashville, or who's gonna be somebody.
Yeah.
Rock that doesn't roll. Doesn't roll.
Eye roll, because everyone knows somebody who's somebody, in Nashville, or who's going to be somebody. And it was the Kings of Leon. And surprise, they were, because he was like, yeah, they're Pentecostal pastors' kids. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, cool. Well, good luck to them. And they did great.
They definitely did. Yeah. And you reminded me of something that, like, I honestly think that my time there really, studying, especially in the Carpenter program and religion, gender, and sexuality, and the fact that we were doing all of this wonderful reading coming from these really specific lived experiences, whether it was, queer theology and philosophy, or, Latina, womanist, all kinds of, or disability studies, or whatever, all of that really kind of helped me develop my ethic as a close listener and interviewer and writer. But I think it also, helped me think about working against, when someone mentions to you, this band, they grew up in church, or they're preachers' kids, they grew up Pentecostal, whatever, how many times have you seen that mentioned in a piece on an artist or a band as though it says it all, is, as though it's self-explanatory, as though it is a generic qualifier, like everyone knows what that means. No, we don't know what that means, because there are a million different traditions and, kind of avenues of, like, the settings that people grew up in are not the same, are not interchangeable. That doesn't tell me what their worldview was, or what their musical experience was, or anything like that. So,
Do you think that a lot of music journalists just kind of get afraid, and when that comes up, and they're like, death, if you go there, you might die, or step on a landmine or something, so that's probably part of it. But I bet also there are people who maybe don't really know the difference. And I think there are also people who just kind of are familiar with the cliches, and so it'll be like gospel choir, or especially if you're writing about Black artists, and the long tradition of, Black American musicians coming up in the church and being formed by it. But that's not a generic story by any means either. But I think people just kind of reach for those, cliched signifiers. And I think we can do better than that, because people are not generic.
I love that. Julie, I wonder if you'd be willing to share a time when having that attention to detail really yielded insight that has stuck with you over time.
Yeah. I mean, there are probably a lot of times that I've forgotten because I've written about so many different artists, but I think even last year, I wrote about Big Frida's version of gospel music when she made a gospel album. And it was really interesting to talk with her about how she saw what she was up to, but also to talk with, one of her core co-writers on that project, who was also a queer person of color who came up in the church in kind of a similar charismatic tradition, and get to talk about, because for him, it had a different significance as well.
We don't need no music. All we need is the Holy Ghost. We don't need no music. All we need is the Holy Ghost.
And then I also talked with a queer choir that's based in Nashville that has a lot of people who are people of faith and it has a lot of clergy members in it too. But it is a predominantly white ensemble. So, they were really self-aware about the space that they were stepping into as being one that was in the traditions that they were stepping into, doing mass choir kind of arrangements as being different from their own, but also last year, I think in December, I went down to Chattanooga and talked with the artist Monrovia. Oh. And that was a really interesting conversation too, since he is originally from Liberia and was adopted by a white missionary family and brought into a non-denominational charismatic setting, and was then immersed in their ongoing mission work, so we had a multi-layered conversation that probably was pretty different from a lot of the other interviews that he does, because we were kind of unpacking, what did he absorb from his upbringing in Liberia and have to, kind of reconstruct from his memory, of that part of his life experience, and what was he raised in by his adoptive family, and what did he have to, reinterpret, and all of those things, and how are those things present in the artistic choices that he makes, and his analysis of colonialism, and like where American religion and colonialism, come together.
With Monrovia, I've heard people talking about him, but yeah, they usually don't get as deep as that. It's often, this is a guy who does protest songs that, is a modern day new artist, and he's doing really effective protest songs. But yeah, getting to the depth of it and unpacking all the layers of the onion,
which I think I really got the sense that he is still unpacking those things himself.
Mm-hmm.
He has been. He kind of blew up really quickly on TikTok. Uh-huh. So I talked to them about just how challenging it is to already be in the spotlight when you are figuring out how you want to articulate, your worldview and your story and all of those things, which are, really heavy and often loaded things for him. I mean, he's a Black artist who's often playing to primarily white crowds, and who really wants to be playing to diverse crowds all over the world, and including in Liberia and other, African nations eventually. But yeah, it's really interesting to kind of get to see in real time how someone is figuring that out and renegotiating their relationship to traditions that they came up in. Because Yeah.
Have you heard about this artist Hudson Freeman? Do you know who he is?
I don't think so.
He's
tell me about
he's an artist who's sort of blowing up on Instagram, but he had this riff that went viral last year for a song called If You Know Me, I think. But John Mayer eventually was playing it, and posting selfies of him playing it. So it really went big. But he is the child of white missionaries in the country that was Swaziland. I can't ever remember the current name of it. But he, he's this guy who's living in Brooklyn. He's like worships Sufjan Stevens, and like is very young, but totally grew up Assemblies of God. Went to their college. What's it? Evangel College,
Evangel,
in Springfield,
yeah,
Missouri. And was just this really talented kid. But he's got sort of an inverse of Monrovia, like he's got these white parents still in Africa as missionaries, and he's kind of finding a place in this world of, mainstream rock guys where John Mayer's playing your song,
Yeah.
But he's also like, but I'm not. So he's like, I see all the problems with what my parents do. I see how there's so many problems, but I also am not going to go out there and disavow everything my parents do, And so it's a real strange position that he's in. I've been trying to get him to come on this podcast, but haven't succeeded
that'll be
yet.
an interesting conversation. I'm sure he's still figuring all that stuff out too,
If you know me like you say you do, you'd be humming along, you'd be singing.
I went to see him in Evanston and got to talk to him a little bit afterwards. And the question he asked me was, "Are you still a Christian?" And I was like, "I don't know what he wants me to." I said, "I'm Episcopalian."
He's like, so is that a yes or?
Did that set him at ease?
I don't know. I couldn't. It was hard to read. So yeah.
This is a really interesting bringing up these two young people who are obviously very smart, very talented, and also, American pop music puts such a high premium on youth. And so that puts so much pressure on these people. It kind of makes me think of the conversation around, and I put a little bit of this in the book, Maverick City and appropriation. And a lot of particularly Black church and Black Pentecostal folks have been very critical of the Maverick City folks for their engagement in how they engage in the business and appropriating sound like Black Pentecostal sounds for white audiences. And they are also very young, right? The people who are involved in the business. And I've thought that there's a lot, like watching artists negotiate all of that stuff and the complexities of it while they're also doing the work of their artistry is, I guess when I think about how much money and how much power and how much is at stake, it's something to watch, for artists who are just trying to figure out how to develop their work and then also engage in these big, huge, quote unquote, the discourse. It seems like we expect a lot of people, how they ought to do that. But anyway, I'm just...
And, Julie, since you're in Nashville, and there's been this debate going on in outside of even just music circles, but the question of, is there a revival among young people? Are people more Christian than they used to be? Or, that kind of stuff. And I see something different in the way Hudson Freeman talks about this stuff. And I remembered why I thought of him is because he opened for Kings of Leon. So, Leo, when you told me,
that's fun.
But
okay,
and Monrovia maybe as well. But I feel like, when we were all in our 20s and bands were, getting big, like Kings of Leon or something, they probably would avoid talking about their religious upbringing or their Mumford and Sons aren't going to come out and say our dad brought Vineyard to the UK.
It's big in Vineyard. Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah. I mean, I think we lived through a lot of different kind of takes on how you position yourself or, different versions of that, because I mean, from that era where it was all about comparing the Christian version of, in case you like, if you like,
Blink 182, Reliant K.
All of those comparisons, or I mean, some of the more, some of the dumber ones, like all the bands that DC Talk was compared to, depending on which album cycle we're talking about, that, and then that kind of that moment where, there have always been bands or artists that have come out of all kinds of religious backgrounds, but I felt like there was that time when people were really on their guard about, wanting to make it clear that's not what we're doing. We are a mainstream band. And there were so many different shades of that too. There were, I think, a lot of bands that, and I love how, Leah, you write about even Jars of Clay, the early, like capturing that early duality of that band when they were doing, playing simultaneously to two different audiences at the same time during that first album cycle, and the messiness of when those audiences wound up mixing together in a bar setting, and youth groups were doing Christian chants in there, which is completely inappropriate.
Oh yeah,
of course, but I think when I watched that moment of Mumford and Sons and a lot of other kind of pop rock string bands that came out of evangelical backgrounds, it kind of felt like they had somehow gotten the permission to think in ways that they could take, songs that are still about communal singing, worship constructs, worship architecture, like living a good life, aspiring to be, to live well and be good and have people singing together in heartfelt fashion about that, but that they didn't have to categorize, they didn't have to go through, the contemporary Christian music infrastructure to do that. I felt like there was that whole wave in the 2000s, and then it continually evolves. So I don't know what moment we are in right now. I wondered, I remember when I was reading about all those pieces where people were like, wait, Justin Bieber, goes to to church, and and all of hip young Hollywood types or celebrities, that they were being drawn into that kind of world. That was an interesting thing that I noted. And then there continues to be so much overlap between the country music industry and contemporary Christian music as an industry, especially with collaborations and people who are writing songs and
Just
playing on
put
some
a little
of those
jelly
projects.
roll on it.
Yeah.
I would love to hear your thoughts on Jelly Roll.
The rock that doesn't roll.
Rock That Doesn't Roll is supported by Larry'sCoffee.com, a roaster from Raleigh, North Carolina. Very high quality coffee beans.
Oh, wow. Just this morning, I brewed myself a little pot of Ethiopia Sidama. Their Sidama Pharaoh, I think is how you say it. Their light roast. It takes a lot to get someone who is from the Pacific Northwest to enthusiastically endorse coffee from outside this region because, we're coffee divas out here. But I love this coffee. It's so good. It was really light. And I used to be a barista. I don't know if I've mentioned that.
That's established lore at this point, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I am in retirement, but those skills just never go away. So I love this coffee.
Yeah, I tried the Bean Martin in a French press, and I was very happy with how that tasted. But, the more I looked into, we were approached by Larry's Coffee, and I was like, well, I got to check this out and see if there's any reason not to do this. They are a certified B Corp. Their coffee is all certified organic and fair trade. In their shop in North Carolina, they use rainwater to flush the toilets. I can't find any reason to not like Larry's Coffee. So if you want to support the show, you can go to larryscoffee.com/RTDR. And if you buy from them, they support us. We hope that you'll check it out. They've been there since 1996. That's the perfect year to have established a coffee company, right? 1996.
It's true. Yeah, it's true. It doesn't get better
Perfect
than that.
vintage. So larryscoffee.com/RTDR. Check it out.
Doesn't roll.
So I'm going to ask you that question because I'm sure you have a lot at the ready. And then I would love for you to be thinking, also about what are some of those industry points of overlap that people might not be aware of? Because people know about Jelly Roll, I think, a lot of the listeners here. I'd love your thoughts on that. And then just, if there's any, like, either a business relationship or a writing relationship or production or something that a tie that people don't necessarily think of, but to you seems significant. Is that too? I'm not as good as you are at interviewing, but I wanted to give you a second to think about it too.
Yeah, man, I'll have to. I mean, I don't have the like specific names at the ready for illustrating like who's kind of working across those those lines that much. But if you want to start with Jelly Roll,
yeah, let's start with Jelly Roll.
Yeah. Well, have you ever talked about Jelly Roll on this pod before?
Really,
I don't
other
think so.
than an aside or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like under your breath, you're like
Jelly Roll.
Jelly Roll.
I mean, I saw him at the Grammys when he was, gave that speech, and then I saw that people, he was preaching at the Grammys, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, was that not striking? Did that not strike you as one of the more Pentecostal acceptance speeches you've ever seen on the Grammys?
Yeah. From a white artist, for sure.
And then people took his comments on the red carpet and was like, he like wouldn't weigh in on some hot button issue. I can't even remember what it was exactly now. But he like tried to stay on the sidelines, and they were like, okay, he's hardcore on the stage, when it's about Jesus, but when it comes to standing up for something unpopular, he doesn't. But
yeah, I think that's something that he has kind of increasingly stepped into, that role of embodying. I mean, he in country music, he kind of embodies this redemption narrative, and that is the storyline of most of his big songs. I mean, it almost always feels like he's relying on, his testimony to spiritual deliverance, and his songs, the way that they're constructed, he's often building up to these cathartic crescendos. That is his formula, and he's constantly reminding us that he has cleansed, he's been cleansed of his past, and those are things that are just kind of, they always feel present to me when he's telling his story or when others are repeating the way that he's told his story, But the fact of the matter is, I mean, I was aware of him many, many years before he showed up in a country setting, when he was just kind of present in the independent hip hop scene of Middle Tennessee, releasing mixtapes and traveling in those kind of circles and
like a Post Malone type circles, or
no, I mean much grittier, and much more class conscious too, and circles where, I mean, there were white rappers, but many of his peers and colleagues and collaborators were Black music makers and producers and that kind of thing, but those are not people or worlds or scenes or communities that he brought along with him, but it was back in those times when he was, in the throes of addiction and had his period of incarceration and all of those things, so I kind of feel like his emergence, his embracing in the country music industry, it paralleled that moment, that very brief moment when the country music industry participated in the nation's racial reckoning, like in 2020, in 2021. And there were different kind of diversity initiatives that were beginning, and there were some Black and brown artists that were signed to Nashville labels, but all of that pretty quickly fell away. And then we were left with Jelly Roll as, in many ways, I think, the legacy of that brief moment of reckoning, because the industry can point to him and say, like, look, we have embraced embraced diversity. We've like, look at this guy who was formerly incarcerated, formerly a rapper, has tattoos on his face. He was a bigger guy up until recently, all of those things. Like that has been the feel good narrative around him. And people always say like, oh, he's such a great guy. And I think he has just, helped that along and continually reinforced that by presenting his songs as, a testimony to his deliverance. So it was not surprising to me that he had that big hit with Brandon Lake, or that he's leaning more into, a warm reception on the contemporary Christian side of things. That it seems like he's kind of charted that path. And I also think that that's a kind of path of mobility, moving through so many different lanes and genre spaces that would not be as available to an artist of color.
Yeah, it's not
Certainly.
like Shabuzi's going to be doing that, right? It's not.
Probably not. I mean, I doubt he would want
He probably
to.
doesn't want to.
Yeah, I'm super interested. There are a couple things about Jelly Roll that are interesting to me. Not necessarily about Jelly Roll as an artist, but about that mobility. One, that he would want to, which I think is a testament to the market. He or his people are aware that this could be beneficial for his career, which is different than in years past.
Right.
And then also somebody needs to write a thesis or a dissertation about these many transitions and what it means for the racial politics of every single one of these genres. Like that's a dissertation right there. There's a chapter for each genre. And then if he decides he's going to do, I don't know, jazz or whatever, like, well, that can be the last one. But I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on, because you've been in Nashville. Okay, this is going to make it sound like in my day, but Nashville has ascended in the nationally since our 20-something years ago when we were students there. So
it was about 20 years ago that we were in grad school.
Yeah. And I think about it at that point in time, I'll just date myself. You could live on 12th Avenue South and it was affordable and there weren't cool places there. So this is like such inside Nashville baseball, but the city has ascended in the national landscape, like the show Nashville. And then now all of a sudden it's this like, I don't know, bachelorette party. That didn't exist. I remember when I lived there. So you've seen the city. I just wonder, what do you think about how his location in Middle Tennessee, like, and in Nashville, like what's the reception of him in the city? And then like, what are your thoughts on what that says about Nashville's place in like the kind of the music biz?
Yeah, I think it's funny because a colleague of mine texted me the other day and was like, do you think that people are getting tired of Jelly Roll? Do you think, because he was like differentiating between, people who might be covering Jelly Roll over time or the audience or whatever. But I think, a lot of people actually, because I'm really tapped into hip hop and R&B scenes that are primarily independent and primarily, built by people of color in Nashville too, that people who've been in those scenes, who've been around for a bit longer actually are, to me, surprisingly supportive of him. Many people that I've talked with, not completely across the board. I mean, I'm just surprised that there's not more critique of, well, why didn't he, bring those that he started with along with him? Why didn't he try and help others ascend too, professionally and commercially? But I mean, generally, like in the music industry, people tend to just speak of him very highly. I think they, it's not that they're saying that he is a great artist or a great singer. It's confounded me how anyone could make that argument that he's a great singer, because he's not. He's a singer. He's an effortful singer. I can hear how hard he is working and straining, which is not something that I want to experience when I'm listening to a singer. But everybody just talks about him like he's a great guy. He's a good dude, because he'll like buy Thanksgiving dinner for all kinds of people, or do these kind of big public gestures of goodwill and that kind of thing. But I mean, to your point, Leah, he definitely embodies an economic upward mobility from, really working class roots and just not having much growing up in Antioch to where he is now, and having all of these resources at his disposal. And his origin point was before there was that big New York Times piece that called Nashville its city, and before the show Nashville.
That's right. Yeah.
All of these things that kind of drew more attention, and the Bachelorette phenomenon, which
that's right. I forgot about that.
I read a long time ago. I mean, that a real contributing factor to that, which is now its own kind of sub-tourist industry in Nashville, was that white bachelorettes decided that Nashville was a place that they felt safe. It's a southern city that they felt safe being drunk in public, whereas other southern cities like Atlanta and New Orleans, they perceived as being more racially diverse and less safe for them to be drunk in public. Like I honestly, do think that is a factor, and I remember reading about that a long time ago. But the gentrification has been relentless and unceasing, and there have been a lot of people who've moved to Nashville from LA working in music, or just a lot of kind of back and forth between those two different cities and scenes. And I honestly have found that when it comes to artists that are talking about these realities in their music, the places where you're actually going to find people critiquing it and saying, truthful and challenging things about it, that's in the songwriting, in the lyrics, mostly of Nashville hip hop, because a lot of those artists are Black Nashville natives, or they came to Nashville to attend one of the HBCUs or whatever. And so that's where I have found songwriting that's talking about, we exist in the shadow of the industry and its resources and its institutions, and it is not built for us. And, this is our city, but it is not serving us, so those are all kind of coexisting realities that I've never thought about that existing alongside the Jelly Roll timeline, though. But it works. That's an interesting framework.
I thought you were going to say the lyrics of Haley Williams, but
also
Haley
but
too.
She's not the first. She's just more recent. That's true.
Yes.
Yeah, she definitely has
taken on Nashville. She challenged Morgan Wallen to a fight, I guess. Right?
Yeah, and she keeps leaning into it.
Yeah.
Because I think I just read something else, yesterday. She's been mentioning it on stage again, as she's doing her solo tour with those songs. So yeah.
Well, TBD if they actually meet up yet.
Hasn't she? She tours regularly with Taylor Swift, right? Has toured with them?
There was a tour. There was a Taylor Swift tour a few years ago that Paramore was on.
Paramore.
It's
okay.
true. Yeah, and I think, and it might not have been the first one, but yeah, they have toured together.
Because I can't think of any one artist who more embodies what she's critiquing than Taylor Swift in terms of the kind of commercial ascendancy of like the kind of the broadly appealing forms of country that transition well into pop. But that's super interesting.
A wedge between Haley and Taylor. Boy,
I'm only suggesting that perhaps Haley's experience of it could be informed by that. I would never try to to drive a wedge between two women.
I mean, by the time that Paramore was touring with Taylor Swift had long since left country music
Nashville.
behind.
Yeah.
That had long since. I mean, that happened back a long time ago with the album 1989. I think her presence, her influence is still certainly felt in Nashville because she really helped establish the model of a young female singer-songwriter articulating, certainly not always autobiography, but that having a place and power in the landscape of contemporary country music. That's profound influence. But beyond that, it's not like she's got one of those honky tonks downtown.
That's so true.
Like the one that Hayley Williams. Yeah. But I did such a deep dive at the end of the year, sometime in December into sometime in January, because I was going to do a big piece on Hayley Williams, and hopefully I'll get to circle back to it. It didn't work out then, but like I went back and was listening and rereading just all of the stuff that followed, the early Paramore career. When you revisit that stuff, it reminds me so much of all these bands that were on Tooth and Nail and similar labels that were like, you could feel in their language that they were coming from, a church background, and there are certain things that they wanted to uphold, but they didn't want to position themselves in that way. And it was really fascinating for me to kind of walk through that and see how she changed in her songwriting and what she was saying about it. And even, in within the band, early tensions between how they should be positioning themselves and what was okay to say, because I think it caused some problems when she began to, lightly critique Christianity in song lyrics. And I mean, she's at a completely different place in her music making and her perspective now. But that was an interesting, it's an interesting arc to revisit because she was in the spotlight from such an early age. Mm-hmm. And I, if I had to be in the spotlight when I was 14, I would have been certainly saying and doing some things that I would feel silly about now.
I really hope you get a chance to interview her because she strikes me as very smart. And in the, in God Gave Rock and Roll to You, I had to make a lot of choices like who to include as sort of representative figures. And I had a little section about her and Paramore, but I ended up not being able to use it. I put in Evanescence in there because they were another one of those aughts bands that were really kind of struggling with how to even think about themselves. But I went back through and read some interviews with her, and my heart went out to her because I thought, like, I've read recent interviews where she's a full-grown woman who's had a lot of experience in the industry and is very smart about her reflections of things. And I felt for a lot of those artists, I felt the same way actually going back through and reading John Foreman interviews. They were so young, but they were really insightful. They just didn't, how would I feel if I were 20 years old and someone stuck a microphone and, so your heart, I guess one of my things is empathy for the young here. Like there's just a lot that you're kind of managing and you don't know. And you're like a business, you and your own person are a business. So I hope you get a chance to interview her. Who else would you love to just like that you haven't talked to so far that you'd love to get their insights?
Oh man, my wish list. I mean, I don't know if there's anyone that I've been, just hankering to talk with lately that I haven't gotten to. I don't know. I'd have to. I mean, there are books that I've wanted to write that I haven't gotten the access to, and you made me think about, you reminded me that on my body, there's a reminder that I should never be critical of foolish foolish stuff that, young people do, because my first tattoo that I got when I was like 18 or 19, it's a kick drum from the drum kit that I had at the time with an ichthus in it.
Oh,
Because I was like, I'm definitely going to want to have this on my body for the rest of my life. I mean, I
so
can't really see it because it's somewhere, like it's not a tramp stamp, but it's like tramp stamp adjacent. So I never see it. So I mean, maybe it's blurry now, so you can't tell that has an ichthus on it. But that's the way I remember how I was thinking, oh, this reflects my life mission and commitments, and I will always be happy that it is on my body.
that is so heartwarming. Thank you for sharing that. I love that so much.
I mean, what you neither of you have those kind of tattoos?
The rock that doesn't roll.
Actually, I don't. Yeah. I missed the window to get my first tattoo. I don't have any
Never too late.
tattoos. I know.
Never too late.
Yeah.
I just got a possum hanging upside down playing a banjo at a possum
nice.
party.
Perfect.
In Nashville 2 days ago.
That's awesome. My sister is the Portlandest sibling in my family, and so she has all the tattoos for me, but my siblings keep telling me that we need to get one with the Portland carpet. I don't know if you know, that's like a regional thing that Portland Airport. Yeah, but so far I've resisted.
I mean, it's never too late. That sounds like a wonderful bonding experience that you could have with your siblings, and do it, in a more clear-headed fashion than when I got my first ones. I mean, I actually got a tattoo that was when I was in that phase of looking for artists that were operating within spiritual traditions, but also, challenging the things that they found to be false or limiting. Like, I got into David Wilcox, the singer-songwriter, and he has a song called This Tattoo. And I got, a lyric from it tattooed on me. And then several years later, I was playing drums at the Silly Goose, Wild Goose Festival. What was that?
Wild
You know what I'm
Goose.
talking about?
Wild Goose.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I was there 1 year, and I mean, it was funny that Jennifer Knapp was also there, maybe post coming out.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other time I played at a festival with her, she had not yet come out, and it was and one of my bandmates was flirting with her backstage and was like, she's gay, right? And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, but I ran into David Wilcox at that festival, and he was not impressed.
With your tattoo?
Yeah.
Aww.
And I was like, man, this is the last time that I get, this is definitely the last time I get anybody's lyrics tattooed on me, and the last time I tell them.
Yeah, that sucks.
Wait,
What did he do?
That's no fun.
Just like
No, he
walk
was
away?
just, I mean, we were backstage, and, he didn't know who I was. I think I had even written about, some of his albums, but maybe I hadn't interviewed him in person or anything. So yeah, I would just introduce myself, and I was like, hey, look, I got the, yeah. I mean,
Man.
maybe he gets that all the time. Maybe he was just having a bad day. I don't know how I would react if somebody was like, man, I loved this opening graph from this piece that you wrote, and I got it.
Got it tattooed on
Yeah. I mean, I do have 2 tattoos from the Dirty Country drag show that I helped start and play drums in that has a gospel component.
Oh,
I have
amazing.
2 tattoos from that, but no lyrics.
Well, yeah, you had mentioned when we were emailing about this that you had a wild ride of being in a lesbian Christian riot girl rock band in undergrad. So could you tell us what was the band and what?
Oh man. I mean, it was like, you're not gonna be able to find there's nothing out there about that band.
Challenge
Thankfully.
accepted.
Well, Andrew is very good. Yep, he's on your undergrad message boards right now.
Oh,
Like the
well,
alumni
it's not gonna
message
be-
boards.
Yeah, it's not gonna be. You're not gonna find anything.
Okay.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was called the Electric Monk Society, and I was the drummer. And a friend of mine really ran the show and wrote the songs and sang, played guitar, and I mean, she was really gifted at doing those things and had a really kind of adventurous outlook on. I mean, I think it was exciting that she, when I showed up, as an undergrad freshman year at this Southern Baptist affiliated college that will remain nameless, she introduced me to the Riot Girl movement there. Nice. And I mean, not the movement that was happening there. We were the only piece of the movement that ever happened. But she was introducing me to, Bikini Kill and Slater Kinney and those bands. And then also we started kind of searching through, like the Christian indie and punk landscape to see who existed there that we also could connect with in that way. So it was really exciting for us when we got to open for a band called Element 101 that was on
I remember that.
Tooth and Nail and, fronted by a woman. And I mean, they were not a Riot Girl rock band, but we were just, looking for like maybe other women in punk. But my friend, I mean, she was an unabashedly butch person and was forced by our school to attend Exodus International and go through that just traumatic. I mean, I really, it's really tough for me to think back on that era and what she went through. And, and it makes me wonder, what could I have done to, protect her from that or to stop that? Because it was such a horrific thing, but she was genuinely, trying to forge her way through pulling all of these musical threads together, of this grassroots, underground stuff, inspiration and activism that she found in worlds that were pretty far apart at the time, which, I mean, that's cool. And she also was writing all these songs. And then she would tell me, okay, this one's about my current girlfriend. And then this one's about Jesus. And, like it wasn't always obvious. I mean, so she was also playing with all kinds of possibility in her songwriting, and she would book all our shows. So, one night I would be playing at a lesbian bar with the band. And then another time she got us on the Way FM, festival there because we, submitted a recording to their kind of like on-air rock contest, and people would call in and vote. And I guess we won a slot on that lineup, and the Supertones were on that lineup. Jennifer Knapp was on that lineup. And so that's where she was, talking to Jennifer Knapp backstage and, and she was like, she definitely thought Jennifer Knapp was hot, and she was like, she's gay, right? And I was like, maybe she is. But, I mean, none of us, like, as it turned out later, years after that band, like, nobody who was in that band, ultimately was straight, but we just were not, we hadn't, figured out where we were at the time, except for her as the brave front woman who bore so much shit just for trying to be herself, so I'm not in touch with her these days to know. I mean, I hope she's doing well and has had outlets to deal with religious trauma, because that is such a thing to have to do, and I've discovered over the years the power of humor, irreverent humor in helping us do that, because I got drafted into a Southern gospel drag trio as their drummer and clogger many years ago. And they were called the Dixon Chicks. And they would take all kinds of, gospel hymns and rewrite them. Like Precious Memories became Painty Crickets, for instance. And then when that band ended, then I helped start a whole new group around Marlene Twitty Fargo, the drag queen, who in real life is a dear friend of mine who was a Nazarene preacher's kid, and, came up singing Southern gospel. And so that is like very much part of her persona. She can't even help it, but we play with so many signifiers that that people recognize, all kinds of people that might come to those shows, they recognize and and can feel their own sense of ownership of, and then they can enter in along with us to how we're sending it up. You know, we always do like a little gospel mini set in the middle and do some, there's an a cappella number that we wrote called Hush Your Mouth Jezebel. That's pretty, it's a pretty funny Southern gospel a cappella send up of patriarchy and all kinds of stuff. But it's a very dirty show too. It's extremely dirty. Many people have told me it's the dirtiest drag show they have ever seen.
That reminds me a little bit of like the Book of Mormon being popular with Mormons, you know?
Yeah.
The actual church has like embraced it in some ways, even though it's like in such a send up, you know? So.
Well, because if you show that you are taking seriously the traditions and the forms and you know them well enough to deploy them and play with them, I mean, that makes all the difference. That's what makes it land. Mm-hmm. That's what makes it funny. And that's why I don't have nearly as much appreciation for people who are trying to send up stuff like that, who don't know it well enough to, you know, to do it knowledgeably or do it with, you know.
Yes. If you're going to do it, you got to do it right. We did an episode about the folks who made music for Electric Jesus, which is this film about a band, a Christian metal band in the 80s who wants to open for Stryper. It's a fun adventure, but they understood the world so well. And that's what made it great, because oftentimes it gets lampooned poorly. And I think I actually really enjoy well done parody, but I feel weirdly protective of it, because it's like, if you got to do it, you got to get the multi-layered like absurdities that go into it and contradictions. In order for it to really be good, because otherwise it's just kind of lazy. Like you can just throw stones, but I wonder, in your show, do you do any non-parody songs? Do you sing any gospel songs? Do people sing along with you? I wonder what that's like.
We've done I'll Fly Away.
Oh, how's that?
A lot of times. I mean, but usually what happens when we do that song and do it, you know, the traditional way, I'm clogging through the crowd and collecting tips, like as though I'm taking up a love offering for the band. Because, you know, aside from me and our drag queen, Marlene Twitty Fargo, most of the people who play with us are full-time musicians and really great pickers, and, you know, and they tour, and a lot of them are from kind of bluegrass circles. So I want them to get paid. So I'm just out there clogging it up and trying to get people to dance with me and put some, you know, pass the plate, put some cash in there. So
how did you learn how to clog, Julie? I did not know that about you.
Really? I mean, you know, my family's from North Carolina, and we were vacationing in, I think we're in like the Maggie Valley area. Yes.
My grandparents had a cabin there. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So
Folk Moot, right?
I bet you've seen, you've seen cloggers in that area.
For sure.
Yeah. I mean, I had done tap dance for 1 year before that, but when I saw cloggers, I was like, clearly, this is more fun, obviously. So, I switched to that, and then in middle school, I stopped because it was not a cool thing to be doing. But I mean, we did dance. I danced with a group called the Space Coast Cloggers, like in parades and stuff like that, and at clogging conventions. And we even danced to, like, Heart in Motion had come out, and we danced to Baby Baby.
Nice.
And we danced to a lot of oldies and just like a really random assortment of old and new popular music. And then I was pulled back into it when some friends of mine here in Nashville were going out to take beginners clogging classes, like in a small town outside the city at a community center. So I went with them, and I got completely sucked back in. And then I was like on the circuit again, doing fairs and festivals, and, you know, like the state fair, the Wilson County Fair, the the Moon Pie Festival, the Molasses Festival, all kinds of stuff like that. And then I actually was clogging to the Queen Latifah version of the Was Not Was song Walk the Dinosaur in a church talent show when a friend of mine's partner saw me and said, you need to join our drag gospel trio. So the next day at the gay bar that they were performing at the time, the next day I became Cousin Pussyfoot. Wow. That's my drag show name. And we would do gaytivity pageants every Christmas and stuff like that. So that has been my primary outlet for clogging for a minute. But yeah, I was just talking with a couple of people last week about missing clogging, and it's a very fun. I mean, I did go to the National Clogging Convention. Sometimes comes to Nashville, and
that must be something to see.
One year I was attending it, and I was going through the certification process to become a nationally certified instructor and choreographer. But you can't do it. You can't do everything all at once. So
my question for you is: do your NPR music colleagues know about your clogging career? Have they seen you clog? Do they know?
I mean, probably only those who have been presenters and attendees of the pop conference.
Okay.
You know what the pop conference is, right?
Wait, the one in Seattle, or?
I mean, yeah, it started there. Now it's currently in LA. Mm. It's moved around, but yeah, it started there. But yeah, I think I might have even included footage that was related to some paper or wrote about it. Like when I was just talking about maybe like multi-layered identities in country and roots music or something like that. So nice. Yeah, they've been exposed to it in that way. But like being a music critic and a journalist and working for these kinds of outlets, whether it's NPR or, other national, international publications that I contribute to, it's not like I'm doing memoiristic work most of the time. I mean, people have to push me to go there to get more first person about things. So so it's not, I don't center myself in the work that I'm doing.
Right. That is, if I may be so bold, as to request an autobiography, because I would read
Nobody
it.
wants an autobiography.
Yeah, they do. I do. This is that request.
The intersection of clogging and proto-lesbian Christian riot girl, I guess. Proto-queer,
Oh, I didn't clog in that band.
Well, sure. But all these intersections, I would love to hear one narrative come from that. Yeah.
We all contain multitudes,
yes.
Like if you get somebody to talk about more than one discrete period in their life, then you will begin to collect the multitudes. And I love when people, just kind of embrace all of that and present it to us in a way that is compelling, and I met this comic not too long ago named Pooja Reddy, who is this rising first generation Indian American comic from rural Kentucky, she's going to be debuting this autobiographical special, I think in early fall, that's called Pooja Reddy is White Trash. And the whole reason why she, started writing that special and writing about her life is because she currently lives in New York, and she would run into people who couldn't make sense of where she was coming from. And they were like, what are you talking about, that you were exposed to country music, evangelical Christianity, but your family was of Hindu heritage and you were in, rural Kentucky and all of these things. And it's all part of your story, So she made comedy out of it, and it's a great thing. I am so here for it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's normalize that. Yeah.
Yeah.
we should let you go. We've kept you a
Yeah.
long time. So,
Julie, thank you so much for talking with us.
yeah.
You are welcome. I hope that you got enough coherent things
Yeah.
for at least 10 minutes.
No, we'll let this run probably an hour.
Oh yeah. There were too many good stories.
And you mentioned Amy Grant, so now we can close it up. So you Heart in Motion reference, came
Oh
up,
yeah,
so.
I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, there's plenty to be said about Amy Grant. But yes, I did clog to
Heart in Motion.
or Baby was what we clogged to actually.
If you do end up getting an interview with her, please tell her to return our calls. We've been trying to book her.
Oh yeah,
so,
we're trying.
Really?
We're trying hard.
Oh man, well, I just need to track her down somewhere.
Yeah,
she's
got
around.
She's got a record coming out soon. So.
Yeah, she's doing some interesting work. There's someone else that we've seen evolve in the spotlight,
Yeah.
which is like I understand like that kind of evolution, I think, more easily than I understand people not changing at all over time and experience and taking in a lot of things, So it's really compelling to get to witness it, I feel like.
Yeah, since we're trying to track her down, I think she's someone who I am so impressed with because I've listened to every recorded interview probably that's been done of her from when she was very, very young. And her poise and intelligence and just, it's unbelievable. You can see why she has been the queen of that world for so long, because from a very young age, she just knew a lot about she must have just intuited a lot about how to, how to be herself and then also be critically engaged. There's a reason why people are very protective of her. So. Yeah. I mean, I think she's beloved and respected for a reason, and she, especially because of her partnership with Vince Gill, is like they transcend those worlds. They're kind of the first people when I think of that transcend country music and Christian music in Nashville, in those, moving through so many different spaces, or even like Stephen Curtis Chapman being inducted into the Grand Ole Opry as a member. I mean, that's an interesting thing too. So those are things that kind of, demonstrate the closeness and the kinship of those worlds.
For sure.
So,
well, where would you like people to follow your work? Where do you want them to look to find you?
I mean, the like national essays and audio stories that I do for NPR and NPR Music, those are all like aggregated on that site. I mean, I think it's, if you search like NPR Music and then my name, and then my work for Nashville Public Radio is all aggregated on WPLN is the news site, and WNXP is the music site. And so there are vast bodies of work in those places. But I also have, the last couple of cover stories in The Bitter Southerner. So that just went online. The cover story that I have on Gillian Welch is out there now for your reading pleasure. And yeah, I mean, there are a lot of other outlets that I've written for, but if you find me on Instagram, then I try to regularly post stuff that I'm attending or reading or paying attention to or writing as well. So that's enough places to look.
Barry, and you have a book yourself from 2011.
That book,
still want people to read
came
it, or
I mean, it's so old now. I am working on new book proposals at the moment. But that book came out of, studying at Vanderbilt Divinity School. I mean, I graduated with that book deal because I was workshopping chapters of it as papers in like my thesis for the Carpenter program and things like that. I already kind of working on that stuff. So people like Ellen Armour and John McClure, they're really, really helped me along in that work. Yeah, but it was such hard work writing that then especially when I was like a starving writer who, none of the writing I was doing was making any money. It was a hellacious process, and that's probably why it's been so long since I've been willing to write another book.
You still remember the trauma.
Yeah, it's going to be better. It's going to be better this time. I'm going to handle it differently and get on some ADHD medication.
There you go.
Well, I mean, back to that thing about let's be gracious with ourselves in our youth. Like you were so. I remember just being like, she's writing a book. This is amazing. So, yeah. So you've always been just a really impressive writer, and it's really fun to stay connected over the years. And thank you so much for coming on Rock That Doesn't Roll. This has been really fun. We'll look forward to the next time.
Yes.
All right. Thanks so much for having me. It's great talking with both of you.
Thanks so much to Julie for joining us. You can find her work by searching Julie Hight. And guess what? It's spelled JEWLYHIGHT. So not the expected spelling for either word.
That's right.
But it is the correct spelling for her. So if you want to find her work, put that into the Google machine. Thank you for listening, and a huge thanks to our Patreon supporters for making the show possible. You can become one yourself at patreon.com/RTDR.
We'll be back in 2 weeks. In the meantime, you can find us on Substack and Instagram by searching Rock That Doesn't Roll, and at our new website, rtdrpod.com.
Of course, you should give us a rating and review on whatever podcast app you're using to listen right now. And consider supporting the show by ordering coffee from larryscoffee.com/RTDR.
Season 4 of Rock That Doesn't Roll is distributed through the Public Radio Exchange with funding from our Patreon community. It's produced by the one and only Andrew Gill.
Our original score is by Jim Cooper of Infomercial USA. If you have a story to share or thoughts on this episode, please call our hotline at 629-204-4264. Our email address is rtdrpod@gmail.com. I'm Andrew Gill.
And I'm Leah Payne. Remember, rock all you want, but watch it when you start to roll.